I'm Reuben Armstrong and I'm a filmmaker. I started out as an animator and then started filming stuff more and more, and now I make films, mostly documentaries, that kind of cross over film and animation.
So thanks for joining us, Reuben. These are a kind of informal Q&A, just to get a sense of all the different ways that somebody can work in the industry, I guess, more than anything, and what kind of go over your story of where you've got to and what you found challenging, what you found fun, why you're still doing it, why you might not want to be doing it anymore, all those kinds of things really. And we kind of will open out to the floor from time to time and get their crazy questions. It's very intimidating, isn't it, at this point? They're just like, most of them want to be doing what you're doing now. Maybe you're going to put them off. I mean, how did you get started? How come you're a film? Do you see yourself as a filmmaker? Is that the phrase you use? Yeah.
I studied design for moving image. That's what my course was called, and then they changed it halfway through to be called motion graphics. Really, it's like branding and animation. That's sort of what the course was mostly, and so that was my background. I went to uni in London. Ravensbourne. Okay.
What attracted you to do it? What were you thinking at that point in terms of?
Really, at that point, I'm 17, probably we're looking at universities, and I wasn't really doing anything to do with animation or film at like A level. I was doing like maths and stuff, and it was really boring. But in my spare time, I was DJing and VJing in Bristol, and I thought that was more fun, so I wanted to do more of that. And so I sort of naively, I guess, thought, I'll just do a degree in VJing, which doesn't exist. So, I went to look at various different courses and then decided to do animation that looked like it might have a job at the end of it. And then everyone on the course really just did sort of computer animation. They didn't really make anything for real or do anything in camera. So I started trying to do more and more stuff in camera. And that kind of learnt the film bit of it as well.
And did you choose to do that because you wanted to differentiate yourself from a sort of selling yourself point of view, or just because you wanted to be doing something different from everyone else?
Some people on the course were so good it was sort of visual effects level.
Right, okay.
And I kind of thought, what's the point in spending ages in a dark room on a computer trying to make something that you could just shoot?
Right,
So if there was something that I could capture, and then maybe still take it into the computer and then animate it or layer it or something. That felt like more possible.
Right. Okay.
Felt more plausible. I just couldn't see myself becoming like a top visual effects person. So I thought, well, let's try and take this in a different direction. And I guess I wanted to try and be different from my colleagues.
Right.
But I mean, how it's kind of ended up now is I do film and animation sort of pretty much 50-50.
Right. Okay.
Documentary stuff, promos, directing, that kind of thing. So, the background in animation is kind of led to a style, I guess, because it's everything. I seem to cut stuff really, really fast.
Right. Okay.
And everything's kind of flickery and quite colourful.
Should we have a look at your showroom?
But I can give you a sense.
Yeah. Great. Love it.
That's not just me, that's me and Jamie. And Jamie is someone who hired me out of uni, and I've basically worked with him now for 9 years.
Right, okay.
First in the first company where he hired me, and then I left to work for another company, but we did stuff together in our spare time. And then I left that company, and then now we just do stuff together. And so yeah.
What's
Reuben and
Jamie's?
Jamie
Yeah,
is
so
like, it's like a company, but it's not really because it's just us and people like to work with us. So yeah, that's why we're not called like RJ Productions or something like that.
Sure.
Because, just trying to be just people, because people like to work with people.
Great. And what's Jamie's?
So Jamie's
what was he doing when he hired
so
you?
his background's graphic design.
Right.
So
okay.
it started out, he was a graphic designer, I was an animator. He hired me as an animator. And then we both did more and more and more film. And then now really he's a DOP and I'm a director.
Right, okay.
For 90% of the jobs that we do. But yeah, having that background, we've got different backgrounds, that kind of helps, and I think maybe means that the visual style ends up being like sort of like a bit graphic designy in the sense we're trying to lay stuff out and craft it a bit. But
okay, so take us back to when you were finishing university, which some of these people are nearly doing, and others are much closer than they think. What were you thinking of doing? What were your plans? What were your hopes? And then what happened?
What happened?
What were you thinking first? What was the plan? What was the dream?
Well, I guess it all kind of like led down to, we had a degree show, and it was kind of everyone. We moved into a brand new building where you weren't allowed to stick anything on the walls, which was really terrible. So we had to build a structure to even have a degree show, and we didn't have any money, so we were like washing cars and stuff just to try and get some money to then have a degree show, and then invite industry along, and then I sort of just ran around desperately trying to get people's business cards, and thought if I get enough business cards, I'll get a job. And it didn't really work like that, doesn't it?
Did you call any of the people?
Yeah, I sent them all emails afterwards,
okay.
and I'd say 90% of them offered me to come in and work for free.
Very generous of them.
Yeah, so the place I ended up going and working was the only place that I could actually afford to live on what they're offering.
Right.
Because people try and get you to work for free. So I thought, although it's not, they didn't really do that much moving image. They're a graphic design agency.
Right. Okay.
And so I was like, I don't, I'd look at their moving image portfolio and I'd be like, well, don't want to do that. But then I kind of thought, well, maybe there's a gap. So I went in there, and actually it was a really good thing to do because there was an opportunity there. So I learnt really, really quickly, and we just kind of say yes to jobs. Me and Jamie, we would basically just say yes to jobs, and then we work out how we're going to do them after.
Right.
And actually, that sort of paid off because I learnt really, really quickly. I think if you go in as a junior in another company, in a company where that's what they do, then you can maybe get a bit more sidelined. I know I have a lot of friends from my same year at college, kind of ended up, getting a bit stuck in a company and having to get out. Whereas the first job I got, I came in basically as an intern and then ended up like running the department and having.
And so what was this company doing? What was
Well, they're a graphic design agency, and then we were doing first animations. The first ones were really boring, like corporate animations for like brands about their annual report. Animated like, we made £1 million, great, so rubbish. But then it slowly got more and more interesting and started to do more kind of charity promos and documentaries and. More branded kind of content, if you like. That's what everyone calls it now. I don't know what we called it then.
And what were you? What was your role? What kinds of things were you doing?
So initially, I was an animator, and I was getting stuck in doing stuff on After Effects or editing in Premiere, and then it kind of evolved into working on because everyone there was as a graphic designer, everyone there did InDesign and Photoshop, so. Putting together treatments, so I learned about how to kind of pitch ideas really on that first job, and sometimes we pitched ideas that involved like, we're going to have to hire like loads of equipment and get a load of crew and a studio and a DOP and a sound recordist, and that we sort of would just pitch it and then work out how to do it after, and try and use friends and stuff like that, and our confidence built up. And I guess actually that's one of the things I was going to show here. So this is one of the first animations I did, which is really, really boring. This is a petrol station from the top, and when people come in, they put a barrier there so you don't just go and pay for fuel. You have to go around past all the suites, and then they try and trick you in. And this is like user journey. People spend loads of money on this, like getting interior designers to make you buy suites in petrol stations. And that was like probably the most boring job ever. So that's sort of where it started, and then we kind of tried to build up. Then we started doing prop-based design, shooting in camera. This was a little film about this woman who'd survived cancer, and she climbed Kilimanjaro. So we made a little documentary about her. This was a film in the Isle of Man about Manx Telecom. So we were, it's corporate documentary, but ultimately, like, we ended up filming lots of people on the island, and so it's kind of learning more and more and more and more. And these kind of jobs, they were taking a punt on us to say, all right, go and have a go. And we were like using kit that we'd never used before and stuff like that, and then actually, learning.
Right. Yeah.
And then it kind of gets a bit more animaty, and then that's probably one of the bigger shoots that I ended up doing. That's me in the green t-shirt, and this was a kind of big, elaborate, prop-based one-shot shoot with a carpenter, a sign writer, 3 cast who were a survivor, supporter, and scientist. It was for cancer research. So, yeah.
And it
just escalated, basically. It got a bit out of control. But,
were you constantly kind of in the stage where you felt like a bit of an imposter, then you'd figure it out and get to know, and then it would
I'd never done anything like that.
Right, okay.
And I pitched it tabletop. I said, we'll just have hands and props and signs, and we'll say, the brief was to say thank you to their supporters, because over the 40 years of research, they'd doubled the chance of survival. So they just wanted to say thank you, and they wanted to make a really optimistic, positive, celebratory video, hence the confetti. And so that was all. The idea was just to do it tabletop. It was just going to be little props and little signs and hands. And then the client said, if we've got this amazing cast of people who've actually survived, or people who've actually worked as scientists on cancer research, we need to see full-length shots of them.
Right.
So then we went, okay, well, let's just scale it up. And then the shoot it starts with kind of handheld, and then as the layers peel back, you get further and further into the studio space, and eventually on the back wall, and there's 10 people there, and they kind of, hold up a big sign saying thank you. So yeah, that really escalated. But
and then what? I guess
then we did it, and it worked.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then I suppose then your confidence goes up at that point, or not. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the first big studio shoot I directed, and this Chris, the cameraman, and Rita and Jamie were both on that shoot. People I still work with today, and yeah, I don't really know why they trusted me to do it, but
but they did.
But yeah, I mean that's ultimately it. I think
you did it.
It was about having an opportunity to, there were people around me, so I think everyone was confident it wasn't going to go wrong, but I didn't know how we were going to do it. So.
Sure. And at this point, were you working for another company, or were you now independent?
That's 2 years out of uni.
Right. Okay.
In the first company I worked for, I worked there for 4.5 years.
Right. Okay. And then what did you go on to do after that then? So now.
So, yeah. I mean, what's coming up next? Oh yeah, we did that. That's for the United Nations. That's all stop motion. So we did stuff that was all hand drawn, so not computer at all. So again, it's me trying to not do it in the computer.
Right.
So that was the campaign was called In Our Hands, and it was about people trying to get behind the Millennium. What was it called? The Millennium Development Goals. Something about trying to eradicate poverty by 2030. Mm-hmm. And they had these 5 points on the agenda. So we thought, okay, well let's just use a hand and we'll kind of count them down. And we wanted it to, because it's for the UN, we wanted it to be as kind of diverse as possible. So came up with this idea of basically every second of the film, it cuts to a different style.
Right.
So I think there was 700 drawings of hands we ended up doing.
Wow. And did you actually do the drawings? Or
there was a team of 8 of us.
Right.
So, yeah, some of them I drew, the bad ones probably. And then we've got illustrators involved as well. And and then kind of layered it all up into a sequence. So yeah, that was kind of more stop motion. So yeah, it's variety. That's what it's really hard to describe what I do, because I've been doing animation and film.
Sure, and is that? I mean, I guess is that what you enjoy? The fact that it's diverse.
I think so.
Is that what keeps it interesting?
The classic thing is if you've done a job, people will go, "I'll have one of them, please."
Right.
And then you have to say, "Yeah, I'm not doing it again," and they're like, "But I want that," and go, "Well, no, no job's the same." We'll try.
And you're comfortable doing that? Yeah.
Well, I think so, because you have to just convince people that it's going to be better if you start and if you approach their brief fresh and listen to them and come up with new idea. You know, there might be origins, might be same techniques you've used somewhere else, but I think there's a bit of a kick as well from doing something you're not quite sure is going to work.
Right.
And when it does, you know, the payoff's there. That's sort of part of it, I think.
Yeah, great. Okay. Any questions thus far from anybody? Has that brought anything up? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know if you ever pitched anything that you couldn't actually follow through on.
Yeah, good question.
Well, I mean, probably, yeah, I mean, this, I pitched that as a one-shot. So the idea was, I mean, I could probably play you a clip of it if you want to see it. So I thought we'd do this in one shot simultaneously, and it looks like a one shot. And we had 2 days in the studio to make the whole thing. And when we turned up and sort of got all the props in the studio and sort of rehearsed it on the first day, we realised we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it because there's so many complex moves and switches and positions and trying to map everyone, and you realise it was impossible. So there's actually 5 takes stitched together here, and you may or may not notice the seams. I think we did a pretty good job of putting it together.
Amazing.
But that's actually like, it's a pretty big fuck up on my behalf to think that we were going to be able to do that in one take. But
and was the client aware? Did they care?
So the big thing is, at the end, very end here, this all slides off, and then there's the crew who've all kind of been helping make it, and people who work at cancer research, we're all supposed to come in at the end like this, and then confetti goes off, and it's like, way, and everyone cheers, and confetti didn't go off, and that's and that's actually really lucky, because this is the only take where the confetti didn't go off. It accidentally didn't go off, and afterwards in the edit, the client said, "Yeah, it looks like cancer's over, so we have to lose the confetti at the end. Can you paint out the confetti for every single the final shot?" And we were like, "No."
But you had a take.
We had a take where it hadn't gone off. So you can sort of see Rita, the scientist here, and also Rita, who's our producer on the job. They're both sort of looking around like, she looks up like, "Is it gonna fire?"
Brilliant.
And so that's like a happy accident, right? But we didn't mean to shoot a backup. So yeah, that's another thing we learned, I guess the hard way, but we got away with it.
Right.
So yeah,
great.
As you can see, we were sort of busking it for years.
Sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so after this period of time, towards the end of your time at this company, what kinds of things
I guess this is the next one. This is the last job I did at that company, pretty much, which was for Stand Up to Cancer and Channel 4. Mm-hmm. It's a shoot in a black room, and various different supporters of all different ages. I think the oldest was 90 and the youngest was 6. Kind of look down the camera, and they're all doing something with orange, because that's the brand colour. So they're putting orange face paint on, or they're making a banner, or they're knitting something, or getting an orange umbrella out. And it was about trying to get people to come and go on a march against cancer. Mm-hmm. Like to kind of stand up, almost like a political protest against cancer. And it happened in, I think, 11 cities across the UK all in one day. And so this was a promo film that was played out before to get people to go on the march, and then it was played at the march, and then it was played on Channel 4 on the night of Stand Up to Cancer. You maybe saw a few shots of it in the showreel. You know, there's stuff like icing sugar being thrown on a cake and coins and stuff like that. And you know, it's people like, do a bake sale, epic, do a bake sale. And everything we'd done for cancer research was always really like pink and white and bright. It was their brand colours, and it was really optimistic. And this was like, because it was a different brand, Stand Up to Cancer, we could kind of do something that was a bit more badass and like in the dark and moody. And this actually got me my next job, basically, because my next job was to go do stuff for Nike.
Right.
And so because this is all moody and slow-mo and looks like a fashion shoot, they went, yeah, you could probably do football boots. So yeah, off the back of that, yeah, I went to a company called Intro in Shoreditch, and this was the first job I worked on, which was with Alison Felix and Mo Farah.
Okay, so did you make the choice to leave the current company
and
look for something new?
I left at that point because I guess that was like the end of 2014, and I felt like I'd done the best work in. I feel like I did better work in 2013 than 2014.
Right. Okay.
So I started looking for other jobs.
Right.
And it just so happened that that last job I did actually helped me get the next job, and then it was all, you know. And yeah, so I went to work for Intro, and I applied for a job there because they did the Match of the Day titles, and I'm a massive football fan.
Right.
And I was desperate to go and work for them, basically.
Right,
So, yeah, managed to convince them. And the person,
how many people work there, kind of thing?
20.
Right. Okay.
And the person who was mainly working on Nike was going on maternity leave, so they had a vacancy come up for cover, for 9 months cover, and so I came in to cover her, and then ended up staying and keeping the job, and she came back, and we both worked on Nike. So, so that was the next sort of stage in my career. Really, was doing lots of that's stuff for the BBC Athletics, fashion photo shoots. That was a Nike lab and a Japanese brand. This was a football tournament in Amsterdam, where it was all about. The slogan was playmaking remixed, so they were like going to mash up video games with football. So we made the DJ booth a arcade machine, and that was on the halfway line.
Right.
And kind of created projection graphics to go round. It was in this gasworks, like big gas cylinder building, and they projected all the way around using 10 projectors. And so we created visuals for, like, if someone scores, it would go goal, like right round the room, which was pretty good. Fun. So yeah, I ended up doing Nike stuff.
And what was the kind of pace of work at this stage? You know, how long for a job to turn around? And what, yeah.
I mean, it was different jobs are different details. So for example, like this one's probably 4 weeks in total. Like a week's pitching ideas and mood boarding. Then we did a shoot, and then maybe 2 weeks post, and we did two shoots on one day. So there was Stone Island and this brand Sakai, which is a Japanese fashion brand, and yeah, so that's quite quick. Whereas this football tournament was 6 months work, and we
6 months solid, or kind of 6 months?
Pretty much,
right.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, this was a beast because. I mean, I think I've got the guidelines thing on here. It's pretty. This stuff. Yeah, this gives you an idea. If I click through, so I created this deck, which is like this is the plan for the tournament to be rolled out across Europe. So you have you find local pitches, then that's the rules of the game. Then you dress local pitches using fly postering and vinyl tape, and make pixel art, and create murals, mirror mosaics, make sculptures. It was basically making a toolkit so that they could actually roll it out on an international level, because they had to work with all the sub-teams. So we were working with Nike to create a kind of top visual identity for it,
right?
And all of this stuff, design posters, and then it kind of eventually, Vans posters. Then they have like a semi-final, which was in 6 cities across Europe. Then it was like the actual final itself, so they had to, projection graphics, and that we just did that as a mock-up. Like, oh, what about if we made the DJ booth in our arcade machine? And then that photo from the other one is like I turned up in Amsterdam and they'd actually done it. They never even told me they did it. So we were just throwing ideas. They just go, keep going, do all the ideas. And then we turned up and they'd actually made it.
Right, wow.
So yeah, that's like a massive job. That's a campaign over 6 months, and I guess culminated in this event where we went out to Amsterdam and queued up the projections, hitting an MPC to kind of queue up when people scored or nutmegged someone, or
Sure, and I guess the upside of that is there's crazy amounts of money and things can get done. I mean, is there a downside to doing that level? Did you experience a downside to doing that kind of work, or is it like,
I guess the downside is the fact that it's not all in your control,
right? Okay.
Because it's so big.
Sure.
So I was in control of the graphics on at the final, but for all of the rounds up to that point across all of those countries, I saw videos on Instagram, but I
had nothing to do with.
We just sent this deck out and sort of hope people would follow it.
Right.
Which, you know, especially for a sort of disruptive brand like Nike, you send people brand guidelines and they're like, they just want to break them. You know, they don't want to do that. So
maybe for some of the students, it's kind of explain what brand guidelines are.
Well, this is like a toolkit really to try and create some sort of consistency for the brand. So really, they're just selling these red shoes. That's it. But how that red shoe appears and the idea behind, I guess the color palette's RGB, which is, you know, coming from gaming. But really, I mean, as long as you've got blue, red and green and you've got Nike everywhere, the logo everywhere, they're pretty much happy. They really just go for like creativity. So like, you know, we said, oh, let's spray paint bleachers silver and make it look like, you know, pixelated. And they were like, yeah. You know, and then this pitch is the semi-final. So, I felt so bad about this. So the semi-final, we designed this pitch like this, and then for the final, I thought, yeah, got to go one more. So the pitch, I don't know if you can see there, but it's like the pitch looks like it's shattered, like it's like an optical illusion, like it's falling through the floor. Right. And I thought, yeah, it's really cool. And we spent ages like drawing this and supplying it as artwork. And then they were like, yeah, can you give us a vector? And we were like, yeah. So we gave them the Illustrator file. And I thought, yeah, it's cool. And then we arrived in Amsterdam and there were these guys with like J-cloths, like gaffer taped to their knees, just on the floor. And they were there for 8 hours looking at my design and then just taping it along the floor for every single one of these on a football pitch. And I didn't tell them I designed it because, oh my God, yeah. They must have been like, have bleeding hands by the end of it.
Oh my God.
It looked cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's quite exciting. A brand that is quite disruptive, that's got loads of money, but is also giving you that creative freedom, and that is fairly unusual.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Intro as a company have been going for 30 years, and they've probably been working with Nike for 15.
Right.
So for me to come in, they've already been working together for like 10 years, so they've got really good relationships. I'm just a director within Intro, so they're just like, well, we trust you. And then obviously this process, go send decks. You know, mostly we'd work with Nike and they'd be in Portland, and we were in UK, and you know, so it worked really well, the time difference, because you'd do a day's work and then at 6 o'clock you'd send the deck over, and they'd get it for sort of 10 o'clock in the morning for their first meeting.
Right.
So they'd go into their first meeting in Portland and present our work, and you know, they have a day's work in the back pocket and they'd look really good, and then they, you know, knock up feedback while we're asleep, and we come in the next morning and have to change it all. So it was exhausting, but I really enjoyed it because I'm a football fan, I think.
Right,
and,
sure.
You know, this is a, God, this job. So this was 140 different football kits, all launched at the same time.
Right.
For this, and Neymar's not wearing that kit. He's the legs of not from him.
Not his legs.
Not his legs. Not his arms. He got new tattoos while we were working on the project, so we had to put them on.
Oh God.
The whole thing's photoshopped. Like
right.
That kit didn't exist. We didn't even have a sample. We were told what the fabric was made of, and we got, you know, logos, and you have to try and put it on them and make it look real. So this is like a massive Photoshop job, and also those have to be big enough resolution that you can print them on the side of a stadium.
Right.
So I think we did like maybe 8 images per team, and then, yeah.
And so again,
It's about scale. It's about learning about scale then, and so my job there was an art director to try and make sure that it retains the consistency of the idea. So the idea was, this kit's made out of recycled plastic. It's the lightest kit ever. Therefore, they're faster. So the idea is you get light trails coming off the back of them.
Okay.
Lightweight, light, fast. Yeah. That. But these trails had to look the same in every kit. You had to get the right player in the right kit. They were all transferring teams at the same time, and it becomes almost like you're doing direction and you're doing creativity, but you're doing it like a factory. You have to, you know, I had a spreadsheet like, you know, this, just trying to work out, okay, so we've done this one, okay, the Inter Milan ones we're going to do next, and you know, that was I actually really enjoyed it because I'm a football fan and I kind of went for it. But by the end of it, I was completely burnt out.
Right, okay. And how long did that take? You know, what period of time was that?
So this one, I think in total, it kind of got passed around a bit in the office, but that was probably going on for a year.
Right.
So you've got to start designing the campaign for the next kits while the last year's one's coming out. So yes, and I think, so of all the teams we did, the only players we actually shot were Man City and a team called Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, Saudi Arabia. And so all of the others are sourced. So you have to find a photograph of them from Getty and then put their head on someone else's body.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a stupid way of working, but because the kits don't exist, and
that's what you have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all really, really top secret. And then people start leaking it online, and then you're like, oh no, the kits got out, and everyone points fingers at each other. And
Okay.
yeah, so to be honest, after this, I had had enough of Nike.
Right.
So
what
happened?
happened?
When I got offered this job, I was like,
it's like the dream job.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was so happy, and then I worked at Intro for 2 years, so all of these Nike projects were all in 2 years, like packed in. It was really exhausting, and to be honest, I got bored of selling shoes and wanted to tell stories, like the stuff that I kept coming back to. And I was doing stuff with Jamie at the same time, and we were making documentaries about people in our spare time, and actually we were enjoying that more because I was really enjoying going and listening to people and just capturing them as a person and documenting their lives. And
what was the scope of those?
So
was it completely random, or did it have a topic? Or
I don't know if I've got it in here. Yeah, that's Cafe Rouge, Nike. This one is the one I was thinking of. It's about a knitter in Hastings, who she has this sort of strange relationship because she makes all of her art with this knitting machine, and people sort of think you would just print it out, but she has to go every single line by line. So it's like making pixel art the size of the wall, line by line by hand.
Right. And
so we thought it was really fascinating, her skill set, and Hastings is a really beautiful place, so we made a documentary about her. And really this kind of helped us kickstart what we're doing now, because now we mainly do documentaries, and it's a real person in a real place, and you take the you research it as much as possible, and you take the camera there and you shoot them, and that's I still sometimes use the skill set I learnt from animation and branding a lot. For example, like we designed this typeface or whatever, but like there's something sort of, I guess, more truthful about it to go listen to people. Sure. I think about it as like you're telling stories rather than selling stuff. Right.
Okay. And so so you got to the end of the whole Nike period. So then what did you do? So you were doing these kind of projects, and then, so what was the next transition for you?
I didn't want to say to Intro, the company I was working at, I didn't want to say that I was leaving, really. Okay. So I told them I was going on holiday. And I said, I'm going to Nepal.
Right.
And so I handed in my notice, and I said, and I was like, I'm burnt out, I've worked too hard, and I'm going to go to Nepal.
Right.
And I went to Nepal for 3 weeks.
Right.
So that's true, but then I came back and started freelancing.
Right, okay.
And that's basically what we do now, and we're making our own films. And
right, and so you were freelancing together at that point, or kind of?
Yeah, so basically throughout my entire career since I left uni, I've been working with Jamie.
Right,
so,
okay.
And the thing is, we trust each other, and we're able to have completely, we can tell each other the work shit, and that's really helpful. And I think we've got similar ambitions, so that, if you find someone you like working with, then I think it's good to stick with them,
Okay,
so we
great.
still work together.
Great. Any questions thus far? Anything? Was that a question? No, it was just a tap of the... Anything? Anyone got any thoughts? Please.
What was the first project you worked on?
I mean, technically that one, but I don't know if it's in here. Bum, 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 bum. No, it's not in here. We did a thing, that's the closest. We did a thing for Jaguar Land Rover. So we made 5 films for them. It was like a TV spot and then 5 animations.
And how did you get that work?
Jamie knew the person doing it, commissioning it. So yeah, Jamie got wind of this amazing job, and so it was basically like, yeah, now or never, really. We were like, it's not every day you get offered a chance to shoot TV, quality work for a brand like Jaguar Land Rover. So we leapt at it, and
at that point of leaping at it, was it a leaping at it totally confident you could do it, or
no.
was that
it was exactly the same. Every single time you're like, oh, we're not really sure, we've never done this before.
Okay.
Because we'd always worked in companies with producers and account managers, and you pick stuff up along the way about how much you should be charging or like how you schedule your time. But yeah, we'd not really, I guess the Jaguar Land Rover one was a thing where we had to learn a lot about, invoicing and cash flow, because that's what we were really worried about. Because
over
we had
what period of time were you working?
We worked for them for maybe like June to November.
Right, so quite a chunk of time,
Yeah, probably nearly 6 months. And it was delivering lots of different films. So there was this big hero film, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
There was a documentary we shot in Madrid, and then there was like 3 explainer animations, which were kind of techie, a bit like this, kind of graphical explainers about cars. Sure. And I don't know anything about cars, so that wasn't that helpful.
To give a sense of what that meant.
Well, obviously, a job that scale, we needed a lot of other people. So we had to have camera crew and sound recordists and producers and casting, and you had to buy flights and accommodation and animators, and had to keep all the stuff on drives, and there's just a lot of stuff to do, and we obviously costed that up and realised how much we'd have to pay everyone else, and then we made sure that we invoiced to make sure we had that, so that we wouldn't be late paying anyone else. And then we didn't really pay ourselves for those 6 months. We just
paid other people,
paid everyone else, and then I think we invoiced like 50% up front and then 50% at the end. And that's how we managed to do it.
And were there any hairy, scary moments during doing that? Were you worried that you were going to?
We went for the documentary we were supposed to shoot in Madrid. Turned up with cameraman and all the kit, Bristol Airport. No flights. Got to be in Madrid the next day to shoot all these like business guys. And so we basically got a taxi to Gatwick.
Right. Well.
That was pretty stressful.
I can imagine.
So it's just all that kind of stuff where you have to try not to panic and work out how to do it. And to be honest, like when you look back at it, like those are the fun bits when it's all going wrong.
Yeah, in hindsight.
Everyone was very happy with it in the end. I mean, the thing about the TV spot is, oh my god, this was a hairy moment. So they wanted to shoot these 3 cars, and so we said, okay, the DOP we had, I knew he'd shot car stuff. He had a lot of expertise in that. So I kind of asked his point of view about, he said, oh yeah, I've got a rig, I've got a harness, I shoot stuff in cars all the time. You want to go in a car like this, where the boot can open like this way, and then I'll tie myself in harness, and then we can shoot the cars, and we're going to shoot these 3 cars from car to car, kind of overtaking each other at night in Milton Keynes. Basically, probably 2 days before the shoot, the agency said, you've taken out insurance for the 3 cars, right? I was like, what? And the cars are like 50 grand plus each, every car. And I was like, no, the cars aren't our responsibility, we're not driving them. Jaguar Land Rover, they're their cars, they're supplying them. They come with a driver, we're just going to tell the driver what to do. We're going to rig a camera in one of them, but they're driving it. And they're entirely responsible. We insure our crew and our kit and public liability, but if you crash the car, if the Jaguar Land Rover man crashes his own car, it's Jaguar Land Rover's fault. And that's what I was saying down the phone, and the agency person was saying, no, you have to insure it. And I was like, we haven't, and I'm not. And they were like, you have to sign this form, otherwise the shoot's not going ahead and the whole thing's cancelled. And I said, I'm not signing the form. And they said, we'll have to agree to disagree. And we put the phone down. And my heart's going. And I phone up other people I know who've done car shoots, and I said, like, I've been told I have to insure these cars that are being supplied, blah, 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 blah. Do you think that's right? And they said, no, yeah, that's completely wrong. It's not your responsibility, stick to your guns. Right. And by the time I had that conversation and got back to my desk, the person had backed down. Right, okay. And they were like, yeah, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Check your Land Rover insured it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like stuff like that.
For sticking through that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you have a sort of sense of what's right. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if I had signed a form there and one of the cars driven into the other car and we crushed the car, or just someone, someone had knocked the wind mirror or whatever, we would have had to pay for that. So, yeah. So
you're having to use that common sense and kind of just make an assessment in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you're constantly doing things that you're not really sure about, and I think I still am and still will, and you're always doing things
that are learning. That. Yeah, there's a. You said earlier that
Yeah, and if you're not sure, like, you can ask someone else. There's someone will have done it before.
Sure.
So even if it means you find someone on Twitter and like message them and say, can I speak to you on the phone about this? There's a way of finding out. I think, I remember at uni we weren't taught software. Like,
sure.
You just had to learn it because it was like, you can just learn.
That's the same for everything.
You just teach yourself.
You just get them to
you teach yourself online, or you teach yourself on the job. And I remember everyone being really angry about that. Other people in my year were like, why are we not being taught how to do it all?
Yeah, we've never heard that.
And actually to learn, that actually what we were really learning on the course was how to like think, and the technical stuff, you still learn. I'm still learning. Everyone's still learning. Everyone I've met, they might be, have 50 years experience working as an animator. They're still having to learn new software, or new cameraman looking at new kit all the time. So
I promise you, I haven't paid Reuben to say that, by the way.
No, you have to. Yeah, you have to. I think that's the key thing that I have learnt, is that you have to keep learning, and then you have to enjoy learning, and that it doesn't stop when you finish a course, because you're learning every day, forever.
And it's constantly changing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're pushing. You want to do more interesting things, and therefore
and I think it comes from that whole thing that you don't want to do the same job. So you have to go and learn something different, so that you don't get stuck doing the same thing.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Question at the back. Yeah.
Yes. When you guys became freelancers, how did you get yourselves and your work out there? In a way?
So. I remember there was a guy when I was at uni who's, my position now, he was like a guest who came in, and I went up to him at the end and I said, like, I really like what you're doing. Like, I just want to do what you're doing. I just want to be a freelancer straight away. And he was like, yeah, don't do that. And he said, work in 2 companies before you do your own thing.
Yeah.
And I still remember that. And that is ultimately what I've done. And I think that's the only... I personally couldn't have gone straight out of uni and been a freelancer. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know enough people. Whereas by working in different companies, you then start to make all these contacts, both upstream and downstream. You make client contacts, and you make freelance contracts that you can people you can work with and collaborate with. Mm-hmm. And so by the time that we wanted to do our own thing, we had all of these people we could reach out to and say, I'm available now. And if you don't have their emails and their phone numbers, then it is hard. It's hard. Sure. So we haven't really done like advertising as such. We haven't really mailed out stuff. So far, we've just been working with people we already knew from previously. And then sometimes you do a job and people see it and they go, oh, I saw that thing you did. Right. And they get in touch. So but that's rare. Most of the time it's people you know, and I think that's the thing, is you can't expect the phone to ring.
Sure. Have there been periods where it's been tricky?
Well,
or have you been quite lucky in terms of things?
I mean, technically, if you actually looked at when all the jobs were and spaced them all out and put them on a timeline, you'd be like, well, there's not really any gaps. But that's not how it feels.
Sure.
No, you feel like, I'm never going to get another job again. Like,
sure.
all the time. You feel
Right,
you know,
Yeah.
I've got a shoot in 2 weeks' time. That might be the last shoot. You know, it's a bit scary, but you kind
Sure,
of
and
feel
I
like
guess,
that. It might be the last job I ever do, you know.
Yeah, so having experienced both being in employment and being freelance, so
Well, there's the security of,
Yeah.
and that takes a bit of the pressure off. The security of if you've actually got a job in a company, then, you know, it's someone else's job in a company to go get the work, and then you're there ready to do it, and that takes a bit of pressure off. There's a lot of pressure once you're doing it yourself, because you're constantly doubting yourself about whether you're going to get another job, or where's it going to come from, or should you drop your rate a bit, or should you get, and then ultimately if you do get a gap, then you don't just go on holiday, you create something else, and then you go tell everyone about that. And so we've done that a few times, I guess. We've done projects that we wanted to do that didn't really make any money, but they got us loads of exposure.
Right, okay.
And exposure is just the worst word, because people, will offer you lots of exposure, and you can't,
you can't live off exposure.
You can't eat exposure.
No.
It doesn't pay the gas bill. So,
But I guess, but you're enjoying that kind of blended.
But if you can convert the exposure into the job, and that has happened.
And I guess having the pleasure of doing the things that you totally and utterly care about in that sense.
Yeah, and I think everyone probably has that sort of split where you're doing stuff, like the Jaguar Land Rover stuff, there's a bit of it in the show reel, but it's not like, it's not going to be on my gravestone, like, Reuben did a film for Jaguar Land Rover. You just kind of, there's some jobs that you do for the money, and then there's some jobs where you're like I just feel compelled to create this. Yeah. And those things I think you have to make sure you have time for those, otherwise you'll get a bit, I just do this for a job, whereas it's actually like the most exciting job ever. So, you should be like, keep that energy.
Yeah, great. Any other questions from anybody? Anyone here thinking that they might like to do commercial kind of work at all? So there's a few people, they're still at the stage where they're not sure about that, which was going to be a question for me, is just like, to what extent did you think you'd be doing commercial work when you were studying, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I guess because my course was kind of branding focused.
It was already quite commercial, I suppose, as a course.
And they had like a really good ratio of getting people into jobs, and they just wanted to be, they just put people in graphic design agencies, and that's kind of what they liked doing at that uni. I was kind of indoctrinated by the end of the course into doing that. But over time, I've felt more and more I want to tell this story, and there is a different way of doing it, and that's kind of what we're transitioning into more now with the documentary stuff. I mean, I guess if I get to something like this is a documentary about Liverpool fans in a pub in Brighton, and there's like 400 Liverpool fans in a pub singing at the telly, and they're 270 miles away from Liverpool, but they're just as passionate and singing all the songs, and so we started filming them, and I filmed them over probably a whole season, just weekends. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I was like, I want to go watch the game there anyway. And each time I'd kind of schedule it with, I'm going to go watch a match there, but I'll go down 4 hours earlier, get the train down to Brighton, and go to one of the fans' houses. So I'd go to their house and film with them, and film their kind of pre-match ritual, wearing their lucky scarf, and praying to the football gods, and then would film them on the journey to the pub, and then I filmed them at the pub, and that was, no one's paying me to go to film that, but I just kept doing it. And then once I'd filmed loads of it, and I interviewed each one of them as well, I then cut it into a little trailer that was like 60 seconds long, and put it in a deck, and sent it to the Guardian and said, what about this? Like, you know, the Guardian have made documentaries about football fans before, like what about this one? And you know, the fact that, you know, it's a very inclusive group, it's very diverse, there's, you know, LGBT fans, football has got a big problem with homophobia, and so there's that angle, and then there's also the angle that, like, you know, in Liverpool, if you're an out-of-towner Liverpool fan, you're a day tripper or you're a wool. So look at all these wolves in Brighton,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So there was that as well. So anyway, the Guardian were like, yeah, we'll not pay for all of those shoot days I've done, but they said they would pay for the post, so the editing process and the colour grade, and they said their in-house composer would come and work on it.
Right, wow, great.
So then it ended up being a 7-minute documentary that ended up on the Guardian website, and got into lots of film festivals and stuff like that. And ultimately Liverpool Football Club saw it as well, and then they said, we want it as well. Right. We released it, we timed it to go out when Liverpool were playing Brighton. So there was a kind of media buzz around it anyway, and Liverpool Football Club, I managed to get the Guardian and Liverpool Football Club to agree to cross-post it on Facebook, and then it got 1 million views.
Right.
And so we've got work off the back of this, so we didn't really make any money off that documentary,
itself,
but other people saw this, and then, you know, we tried to make, you know, we made sure we were credited, and and sent it to film festivals to try and get more recognition as well, I guess.
And in terms of that, I guess, kind of middle ground of like work that is commercial but is telling a story, I mean, is that something that's on your radar? Is that something that...
So yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing more now. That's why I was kind of getting onto this, is actually now we're developing ideas, and then because we've learned about how to pitch stuff from graphic design and branding agencies, we're able to put together quite nice like visual treatments and send it off to commissioners. So for example, what day is it? On Saturday I'm going to Birmingham to film a thing for Channel 4 News about can virtual reality tackle gang violence?
Right.
And that's basically something I heard of that was going on, and so I just wrote a one-pager, sent it to the Channel 4 News Commissioner, and like all of these people, they're just, you know, their emails are just online, like you don't have to know them.
Sure.
You just go on the Channel 4 website and just get their email and just send them an idea, and if they like it, then you get to do it.
Right, great.
So we're doing a bit more of that now, where we're like originating ideas and content and going and pitching. We're going to pitch the idea. So it's kind of like, originated by us rather than a client coming to us and giving us a brief.
Sure, yeah.
When you pitch it to them, how in depth do you go tell them about who you are and your work, or is it literally just the idea?
Over here. Let's see if it's on my desktop. I'll show you how simple it is. I mean, is it this one? Yeah, it's that. Yeah, one page. So we want to make a 15-minute documentary. It's probably going to be 5 minutes now. Made that image. That took me about 10 minutes. You know, line, in an inner city back alley, an experiment is taking place. They're shooting an interactive virtual reality performance. It comes down to a choice. You know, I just wrote some guff, wrote some words, and, but anyway, it's trying to sell the idea. You know, try and say why it's exciting, basically, and yeah, I mean, I think that's an earlier draft actually. That's 2 pages, but we got it down on 1 page.
Did they tell you why they gave it to you? What their reason was why they liked it?
Yeah, because it's 2 current stories. So for them, it's like a Venn diagram. There's like technology story and there's gang violence, and you know, we're tapping into the fact. I think one of the things we wrote on the final thing is that knife crime in the West Midlands has reached a peak that it maybe ever, or maybe, well, certainly in the last decade, and it's I think it's 280 stabbings a month recorded in the West Midlands from 2018. That's the average, 280, and so. It's nearly all related to gangs, and so that was pretty much the leading line in the treatment. Like, you know, we know you're doing stuff about, to the commissioner, we know you're doing stuff about knife crime anyway, you know, here's a positive story. You know, here's
Sure.
people trying to make a difference in their own community. It's basically a theatre company and some technologists working together to work with local kids in the schools to do this workshop, and the performance is all using local actors, young actors, and then in the end they're going to put it in headsets and Oculus Go headsets, and maybe have about 10 of them in a classroom and run a workshop. And because it's interactive, people will have different choices and different decisions, and then they're going to talk about that afterwards in a workshop, because these are kids who are potentially at risk of getting involved in gangs or you know, violence or antisocial behaviour, and the virtual reality stuff could make them think differently about the world. So that's our pitch.
Sure.
You see, tune in to Channel 4 News next month and see if I manage to do it. But yeah, I've never made anything for Channel 4 News, so again, it's the same thing where you're just sort of busking it, but like, you know, I've watched Channel 4 News, and you know, let's have a go.
Great. Okay, any other questions?
Just
Yeah.
sorry, just to follow on that. How did you find out about the VR gangs test?
I made a film about a previous VR project that the technologists worked on. So they did one about the 9 months we are all in the womb, and how it was based around the 5 senses, and about how our senses develop over time. And so I made a documentary filming people's reactions to that, because a lot of kind of virtual reality is kind of tied into gaming, and so big brands like Oculus and PlayStation are worried that actually they're just getting loads of blokes, and this was being created because that, you know, people were like, oh, it's a story that ultimately, you know, everyone was in the womb at some point, so it's kind of captivating in a different way. Maybe it's very sort of gentle, floaty experience. You kind of put the headset on and you float around listening to Samantha Morton talk about your optic nerve forming at 6 weeks old or whatever. It's just incredible. The main thing with virtual reality is people, when they come back in the room and they take the headset off, if they've been in for 15 minutes and they're just like, whoa, and it's that sort of spaced, like, so yeah, I film people's reactions coming out of it, and then telling me what they just experienced, and that helped them promote their VR app. So because I knew of them, kept, you know, ear to the ground, heard they were doing this one, could see, right, okay, that's a great story. Who could we pitch it to? I think we discussed BBC 3, Channel 4, local BBC News as well, The Guardian, maybe Wired magazine, anyone who might commission a little short piece, really. And we then decided to just focus on Channel 4 News and go all in, try and get them to pick it up, and just sent them an email and they picked up the phone. So it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So just two last questions. One, what next? What's your aspiration? What would be? Yeah. What?
So for me, almost like a big Venn diagram. There's animation stuff I've done, and there's documentary, and there's like this beautiful little sweet spot, animation and documentary. You know, that stuff. And that's what I'm trying to do more and more of. So yeah, if people come to me with a brief where they want some animation in a documentary, I'm all over it.
Right. Okay.
You know, or they want an animated documentary, like, yeah, I'm kind of going for it. So yeah, that I think as well, really kind of like mixed format stuff. Really like working with archive. Done a few projects recently, which I can maybe click through the last few pages of here. If I click on it, yeah, so stuff like this, like.
It's not come up yet. Hold on. There we go.
This, these are all real documents and real newspaper clippings from 1963, when the Bristol bus boycott, which you may or may not know about, was when large population of Bristol, not just black, white as well, just said, we're not getting on the buses because you didn't hire this black guy. And just went poof, like that. And the buses had to remove the colour bar, as they called it, and allow black people to get a job on the bus. And it was just this, like, I think he was 19-year-old kid who just wanted to work on the bus. I think he was from Jamaica, and he came over to the UK, and he was like obsessed with the buses. He thought they were amazing, and he wanted a job. Right. And he got an interview on the phone, and then when they found out that he was black, the interview was cancelled, and it created this almost a riot in Bristol.
Right. Wow. What a great
and
story.
so this was an amazing job to work on as an animator, because they gave me all these scans, you know. They gave me all this real stuff. It's a real story, there's real scans, real documents, and yeah. So working with Archive, and because I've got this animation film skill set, I can kind of bring that stuff to life and work with, you know, I keep doing that because it's like the texture,
real things,
you know, like the Super 8 and, you know, old VHS and just crusty video, really crusty stuff. So yeah, that's what I like doing now, crusty stuff. And then this is the latest thing I just did. Can anyone guess who that is? It's David Bowie.
Is it? Okay.
And so there's a documentary on iPlayer at the moment all about David Bowie's feature-length documentary, and I created the first 2 minutes of it, which they gave us all these photographs of Bowie, and you know, this in particular was a contact sheet of 67 photographs, and they'd just gone and just taken loads of photos of him, and I guess these are from late 50s, and yeah, we scan them all in, and they actually animate. So he sort of comes alive.
Right, wow.
This you know, animated photographs, you know, it's just like frames, right? Stack them up close enough together, and it's sort of, we've sort of created footage really of Bowie that didn't exist before. So yeah, that was a dream job as well, because it's kind of, that's the animation documentary.
Right.
That's the then.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to do.
that's where you're headed.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions before I ask the last question? Anything? Anywhere? They're very shy. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question on their behalf. Is what would you be recommending to these young people as they think about leaving, thinking about or what they can be doing while they're here, and what they can thinking about when they go out into that wide world?
I guess you have to think about what your USP is, and obviously one of them is that you're...
So your unique selling point.
Yeah. One of them is that you're, you know, young and up and coming, and therefore better than everyone else because you're exciting and innovative, and you're going to do something different, and so I guess people who are looking to work with young people or people early in their career are sort of expecting you to do something weird. So when I got my first job, I had this really corporate, boring animation that I thought would get me the job, and they were like, "Yeah, I don't care about that. Show me that other thing where you were wearing a horse's head skateboarding," and like they really wanted to see that, which was like I was a bit embarrassed about. I was like, "You're not going to like that. It's not really what you do," but like it was weird, and they really liked it. So I think weird stuff is a good thing to do, because you can kind of, you know. Now I'm working, I just want to be in your position, getting to create whatever I want to create, you know, whereas actually you've got to, you know, wrangle briefs and
I think that's a good point.
So you can do anything.
Yeah, because I think there's a, you know, when you're starting out, you want to be doing things like other people. So, you know, in lots of ways you're trying to emulate people who are already succeeding in some ways, but actually, just pushing the boat out and doing...
This is a great, you've got a great opportunity at this stage of your career to do really weird stuff. And it might take you 10 years to fight back through your career to allow yourself to do weird stuff again, potentially. So, enjoy that bit, I guess.
Yeah, great top tip. So at the end of that is get weird, people. Weirder, should I say. Okay, Reuben, thanks so much. That was so brilliant. It was just great to see everything you're doing. And I think it's really interesting, that whole kind of graphic thing that's coming through your work as well. And that's something that's kind of new to quite a few of us here. So let's give Reuben a round of applause and thank him very much for